The potential for this illness exists in all people, and under the right circumstances, any man or woman would be driven, like him, to the other side. The other side, perhaps, may not be the best way to phrase it. After all, there is no wall between here and there. It lies on the borders where reality and unreality intersect. It is a place both close and distant. Some say it isn't even an illness. I cannot agree with them. I am a doctor, not a philosopher or even a psychiatrist. But sometimes I have to ask myself this question. It's true that to us, his imagings are nothing but the inventions of a busy mind. But to him, there simply is no other reality. Furthermore, he is happy there. So why, I ask myself, which in the name of healing him must we drag him painfully into the world of our own reality? This was one of many quotes I think perfectly represents Silent Hill 2 Remake. As someone who never played the original, I was thoroughly impressed playing the remake. Silent Hill 2 is considered one of the greatest horror video games. To this day, it is still talked about and recommended as a horror classic. Its remake treatment was greatly anticipated, and I looked forward to experiencing this game for the first time. Many fans of the beloved original express the effective execution of its horror elements, the grim atmosphere, the startling monster designs, the confronting themes, and the shocking twists. After my first playthrough, I like to share my thoughts as a new player in this mysterious world. This is my video review of Silent Hill 2 Remake. Warning: this video will contain story spoilers and sensitive content. My first impressions after finishing Silent Hill 2 Remake are that it was both literally and visually a poetic game. During my 15-hour playthrough, many memorable elements stood out that made the story of Silent Hill 2 not just scary and creepy, but deep and thought-provoking. For most of my gameplay experience, I was shaken. Aside from being easily scared when it comes to horror games, upon reflection, the underlying psychological themes played the most effect on me, and even got me thinking further once the story was over. I will do my best to summarize, but the story of Silent Hill 2 Remake focuses on James Sunderland, a lone widower who receives a letter he believed to have been from his deceased wife Mary. This letter would draw him to the misty town of Silent Hill. While navigating, James would encounter other human characters and horrifying creatures, including the infamous Pyramid Head. In the beginning, it was a straightforward story, going from one place to another, with several roadblocks and obstacles, taking the main character on many pathways and unexpected encounters. As the game moved along, the story evolved in complexity and deeply complicated, particularly when suspenseful and dark themes were explored. The themes I believe Silent Hill 2 Remake explored included trauma, anxiety, the stages of grief, and the challenges of controlling human emotions and perceptions. These were heavily illustrated through the visuals and the portrayal of the human characters. Each of them had their own dilemma. Their stories consist of their past, their agendas, and greatest fears, sometimes often adding up to the wider world of Silent Hill itself. The humans James encountered included Angela, a teenager whose backstory was perhaps the most heartbreaking, with allusions to self-harm and trauma due to years of abuse. Then there was Eddie, an obese man suffering from paranoia due to being bullied. Then there was Laura, a mysterious little girl with trust issues. And Maria, a woman with a striking resemblance to James's wife Mary. She mirrors James's trauma, as well giving hints that everything is not what it seems. From my point of view, these characters not only reflected and contributed to James's character development, but speak greatly on what Silent Hill 2 is all about. I would have to mention the monsters, because it would not be as effective of a scary game without them. They were just as equally mysterious and scary as the human characters. Adding up to the wider mystery that is the town of Silent Hill, it becomes overrun by these creatures, each with their own menacing design and frightening presence. I often interpret them as combating them to face one's fears and defeat them to overcome them. There are the limbless creatures, resembling patients in straitjackets that crawled and spit acid. There were flesh-covered monsters making growling noises and sometimes climb across walls. Then there were the bubblehead nurses, stumbling with a melee weapon in hand and can really whack a mean punch if cornered. Then there were the headless mannequins, which gave me the most jump scares. Designed like dummies stitched together with loose limbs, they hide, stay idle in the dark, and surprise around corners. The way I felt about these creatures, I must be honest, made me distrust my own furniture, thinking that they may come alive. Crazy idea, but it proves how effectively scary these monsters were by not just design, but the execution of them in gameplay. Of course, the most iconic monster of the Silent Hill lore was Pyramid Head, a recognizable horror character praised by fans I had heard so much without having even played the original game. It immediately comes to mind when someone mentions Silent Hill, and without a doubt, the design of this creature stands out the most. Wielding a giant knife, this indestructible creature stalks James and appeared during memorable gameplay moments. Pyramid Head was a fantastic visual representation of the game's dark themes and the complete opposite to James's character. Fighting against Pyramid Head had its thrills and terrors. The sounds emitted was both intriguing and terrifying, but no dialogue spoken, raising questions on the sole purpose of this creature's existence. It had been concluded that Pyramid Head was described as the manifestation of James's guilt and self-hatred due to his past mental trauma. And I would have to agree after finishing playing. This was the perfect example on how sometimes the monsters created are from our worst imaginations, and how even humans can bring out the worst monsters within themselves. The more I played Silent Hill 2 Remake, the more dark themes of the human experience were effectively executed. At times I felt uneasy, uncomfortable, and saddened. This goes to demonstrate how well done of a game Silent Hill 2 Remake did in shadowing and deeply exploring these themes. I would argue that the setting of this game is almost like another character itself. Upon arriving at the town of Silent Hill, the heavy fog plays its part of creating a mysterious and terrifying atmosphere. This was a visually notable feature. The fog disguises the monsters as they slowly appear in creepy fashion. Some outlines can be visibly seen, but made invisible unless their sounds could be heard. From James's perspective, the player will go on a journey trying to figure out his past. That in turn tested perceptions and wondering whether everything seen was real or not. Silent Hill seemed like a simple town with many facilities, including a hotel and a hospital. As the game progresses, more settings appeared, and even how they were presented emitted more terror. Dimensions will shift, and the lighting greatly changes. My childhood fear of long, dark, and empty hallways have come back to haunt me in more ways than one. The embodying feeling of waiting for something to suddenly appear from the shadows, or our worst imaginations filling in the blanks, was at times scarier than the actual monsters themselves. This goes to demonstrate how the use of light and dark were effective in delivering those scares and sense of pending doom throughout the playthrough. Most of this game involved a lot of exploring. In fact, it was a key component to completing this game. As much as I was scared to look around, I was both mesmerized and curious. It became at times easy to get lost, wandering throughout Silent Hill. Aside from collecting useful items such as medicine and bullets, objects offering disclosing information about this world was captivating. Some of these objects would come in the form of clues that were necessary to solve puzzles. Thankfully, maps were provided in this game, and they became handy checklists to identify where is accessible, particularly when retracing steps. Every time an area was cleared or something was discovered to be of important use later, markings will be made on these maps. For someone such as myself, who can easily forget things and enjoy taking notes, this became dependent and reliable to have, as this is what I would do in a similar situation. Handwritten notes and symbols would highlight the map, especially when I had taken a break from the game and returned later, trying to figure out what I had done and what to do next. Silent Hill 2 Remake's setting was not too difficult to get around, but the unsettling atmosphere can even make those simple settings of this game distracting and stressful. I felt I had added extra time playing this game for exploring too much. But don't let that deter you from exploring yourself. In fact, it is highly encouraged, not only for those useful resources for survival, but other items. Again, the images and letters that were discovered revealed interesting and devastating histories of Silent Hill. The gameplay of Silent Hill 2 Remake was also not too difficult to manage. Aside from exploring and solving puzzles, combat does occur. James can also jog, dodge, wield melee weapons, and use firearms to kill enemies. The static noises heard from the speaker controller indicating nearby enemies added to that creepy gameplay experience. The darkness disguises the monsters, and the louder the noises were, the closer the creatures were, resulting in either preparing yourself or taken by complete surprise. Combat ranged from easy to challenging. They especially escalated during the boss fights. There are no clear indicators on how to defeat other than fighting them yourselves through trial and error. They too also ranged from the terrifying pyramid head to the unsettling abstract daddy. Being the scaredy cat that I still am, I first played through on light mode, the easiest mode, for as much of the full first-time experience as possible. In this case, enemies took more damage quickly, and additional supplies were readily available. Perhaps once I work up enough courage for New Game Plus second playthrough, I will challenge myself on a higher difficulty and identify any differences in gameplay. If any of you had played the higher difficulties, share your experiences in the comment section below. I would like to point out that during my experience of picking up items became tedious at times. Sometimes items such as bullets were hidden in drawers, and dependent on where the game's camera angle is or distance, I would find it difficult to pick up an item. I don't know if this was a gameplay or technical glitch, but this had happened to me on several occasions. Yet again, I admit to still be terrified to pick up items, unbeknownst that enemies are swarming at me at the same time, further adding to the terror of trying to survive and fighting back. The use of light and dark also came into gameplay. James would be equipped with a flashlight earlier in game. Thank goodness. Most of Silent Hill 2 Remake takes place in the dark. Light becomes a reliable source in not just exploring, but combating against enemies. Sometimes even encouraged to fight them without the lights on for safety, while others, light was essential when navigating around. The rooms and spaces in this game often felt claustrophobic, and with the constant surveillance of enemies would give the player an utterly confusing and startling gameplay experience. For the fans highly anticipating its remake, of course, there would be the visual comparisons. As with all games given their remake treatment, the graphics and sound design would be the most notable. Following in the shoes of Resident Evil and Dead Space, the elements in which a horror game could be successful are in their visuals and sound. Firstly, the human models were given a realistic facelift, making them believable characters. I had already mentioned the environment settings, such as the town of Silent Hill and their shifted realities. The lighting I cannot applaud even more, other than to play this game, as with most horror games, with the lights dimmed down. The soundtrack of Silent Hill 2 Remake was composed by Akira Yamaoka. This was one of the most haunting game scores I had heard in some time, with some upbeat tracks thrown in between breaking that terror cycle. There were distressing sounds than others. Combined with the creature designs by Masahiro Ito and the spooky sounds, this soundtrack was perfectly executed. But, to my greatest disappointment, as of recording, there is no photo mode available for Silent Hill 2 Remake. And that is a real shame, because this game, despite its horror components, was visually beautiful. Some scenes and landscapes were gorgeous and breathtaking. Some scenes looked like pictures from ghost stories, haunting and beautiful at the same time. With the improved graphics, the human models also looked amazing, and they would have made for spectacular screenshots to capture in their improved facial expressions. Hopefully one day, an update will be considered, so an opportunity to share the wondrous art of this game to new players. Silent Hill 2 Remake was an amazing horror video game from start to finish. It was one of those games I wanted to play for a long time, and I was overall satisfied. Since finally bringing up the nerve to play more horror games, I knew I did not want to miss an opportunity to at least experience an iconic one. While I cannot compare it to the original, I am pleased to have played through this and above all, survive. Surprisingly shocking in its presentation and gameplay, the exploration and puzzle solving were both fascinating and thrilling. I am pleased to report that I am now a new Silent Hill fan, keen to return to Silent Hill soon. Silent Hill 2 Remake is now available to play on PlayStation 5 and Windows PC. And that is my review on Silent Hill 2 Remake. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you had played Silent Hill 2 Remake, what are your thoughts on the game? If you had also played the original Silent Hill, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you all for watching. This is Pearl, signing out.